Hi, it's Marco Rubio. I want to thank you for the opportunity to join you today. You know, whether in Russia's SolarWinds hack late last year or China's massive breach of the Office of Personnel Management in 2015, our adversaries have made clear their determination to exploit our cyber vulnerabilities. No serious national security strategy can neglect cybersecurity. We must actively plan for both defensive and offensive cyber operations as a result of that. But before I discuss the cyber challenges in detail, it's important to first contextualize it within the more general US-China strategic competition. To understand a threat, we first have to identify it, and you have to do it precisely. The Chinese Communist Party has no moral or legal restraints on its pursuit of dominance, and that includes, by the way, genocide. From Mao Zedong to Xi Jinping, the party consistently prioritizes power and its totalitarian vision above everything else. The Chinese Communist Party has traditionally focused its efforts on promoting its priorities domestically, inside the country, and then suppressing discourse regarding human rights. However, Xi Jinping's rule has seen the export of suppression tactics to other countries through malign influence campaigns that are aimed at quelling criticism. For example, China's Belt and Road Initiative has placed the literal groundwork for the expansion of the Communist Party's influence. And as the past year has shown us, Beijing is now bullying the world through the cyber domain as well. So today, a genocidal authoritarian regime is working tirelessly to rewrite the rules of the international system. Rules that have brought the world peace, prosperity, and stability for decades. Our leaders believed that trade and investment would liberalize China, but that was never Beijing's goal. So what began under the Trump administration must now continue under President Biden, and that is a realignment of policy and principle. Now, a more balanced US-China relationship is one in which our national interests are no longer given short shrift to economic expediency, in which our national security will not be undermined and our industrial base weakened to a hostile regime's benefit. We need economic policies that advance freedom, not curtail it. We should trade and invest with others who embrace our values and who are going to follow the rules. And I believe here in Washington, we must lead in this regard and stop ceding economic leadership to multinational corporations who have no loyalty to American principles or to America's workers. Rebuilding industrial capacity is critical to meeting the challenge at hand, but we cannot successfully deter the Chinese Communist Party without robust US military capabilities as well. And make no mistake, the Chinese do not believe that they can win a fight against America and our allies when we are unified in an operation. Beijing's long-term goal is to completely push our forces out of the Indo-Pacific region. While they seem hesitant to use military force to do so now, and emboldened China would likely reconsider that in the coming years. To prevent this, we must develop and deploy military capabilities that make the cost of potential conflict with the United States prohibitively high. Beijing cannot be allowed to continue to steal and cheat through cyber espionage, theft, and other means. The United States must place controls on the export of sensitive technology, particularly semiconductors. We need stricter screening of acquisitions of US companies in key sectors, and to reshore, to bring back critical industries like pharmaceuticals. We should also create incentives to move supply chains, even for less critical industries, out of China to other places, for example, like Latin America or India. These could be good options if they can't be here. We must limit the Chinese Communist Party's access to technologies produced through American innovation and the research institutions that power it, often funded by taxpayers. Cyber attacks are the chief illicit means by which the Chinese Communist Party acquires information about our government, our companies, about the people that work there. But the Chinese Communist Party is also using licit measures such as mergers and acquisitions to gain access to Americans' private information, like, for example, genetic information and genomic data. The CCP is creating a digital Silk Road under its control by using state-directed companies like Huawei and ZTE to gain footholds in the infrastructure of developing countries. So we must help allies set up their own export controls, their own human rights sanctions, and mechanisms for screening foreign acquisitions. Whenever possible, we should create a consortia of free nations that develop alternatives to Chinese 5G, to access to rare earth minerals, and to other technologies. Now, arguably, technology and network capabilities and advancements are the two asymmetric advantages behind US dominance for the last 40 years. But that technology and network permeation come with a hidden cost, enabling our adversaries to launch espionage and attack operations from the safety of within their own borders. Recently exposed cyber intrusions affecting SolarWinds and Microsoft Exchange highlight how sophisticated adversaries can leverage a few critical vulnerabilities. While China and Russia top the list of threats, the low cost of entry into the cyber domain means we also have to worry about smaller state and non-state actors. Moreover, the domain itself is fragmented and diffuse, so no single outside entity knows the intent and full scope of a cyber campaign. The language we use here, that's important. For example, the operation conducted against SolarWinds was a sophisticated cyber espionage campaign, not an attack. In contrast, China's exploitation of a series of zero-day vulnerabilities in Microsoft Exchange indicates a more brazen and indiscriminate behavior. Consider the wide range of affected victims, combined with the fact that the Chinese had to engage each victim individually. To date, there has been no meaningful response to either of these campaigns, and that silence amounts to tacit approval. That doesn't necessarily mean that we need to fight cyber with cyber. In fact, it's far more effective to respond with other instruments of national power. That could mean a mix of sanctions, declaring intelligence officers persona non grata, or using a démarche to the ambassador. And in some cases, kinetic responses may be appropriate. To effectively deter, we must start maturing the doctrine and promulgating cyber norms. By clearly articulating both, we reduce the likelihood of miscalculation in this new frontier. But it's also important to delineate between cyber and misinformation operations. Our adversaries today use new tools to engage in old forms of warfare. Disinformation, the spread of misinformation, and propaganda move around the world at the speed of a tweet, allowing them to manipulate existing societal divisions and to create new ones. Their goal is to disrupt any semblance of national unity. And why? Because an off-balance West or a divided United States creates room for their own ambitions, whether that's Russia's designs on Ukraine, or the Baltics, or China's designs on Taiwan. The State Department's Global Engagement Center is the U.S. government's public-facing effort to counter these efforts. The broader intelligence community, as well as the armed services, also have a role to play, as a great deal of the activity is directed by state actors and can readily be described as information warfare. In conclusion, let me just say that the challenges we face today are more complicated than ever, but they are not insurmountable. And as you've seen today, solutions do not have to be partisan. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.